Hello everybody and good morning. Today I'm going to take a little bit of a detour away from what I usually talk about with sort of engineering and computer science. Instead I want to talk a little bit about some of the politics that's been going on recently. Or more accurately, I want to talk about why you shouldn't talk about the politics that's been going on more recently. So, what I've been working on recently is a fully featured Kahoot clone in Go. And the reason I wanted to do this is because the website was loading incredibly slowly in my school, so I thought it would be probably a good idea to just rewrite it from scratch my way and have it work exactly the same and make it slightly more distributed so we don't have to rely on the company to run their servers correctly. And while I was doing this, I was occasionally opening Newsboat and having a look at my RSS feed, only to be completely spammed out with articles from supposed technology outlets like the EFF, which were telling me about completely unrelated to technology topics. And this is when I started to make the mental jump, that in the modern day, it seems like even the most apolitical organisations have simply been politicised to the point where it's almost impossible for you to simply get a neutral statement of fact from them. I've got up here two websites. I've got up The Guardian, which obviously, especially in the opinion section, isn't supposed to give the illusion of neutrality, but in the news section, usually at least there is a sort of aura of neutrality. And here we've got the EFF's front page, which, rather than simply being related to technology and attempting to defend privacy, as we have if we actually scroll further down the resources on this, instead we have reproductive justice, and among other things, we've got the abortion rulings. And I'm assuming that this Dobbs ruling is some other ruling I've not heard about, but obviously everyone's heard about the US Supreme Court ruling recently. But what has this got to do with the Electronic Frontier Foundation? I used to donate to the Electronic Frontier Foundation as part of my charity work for Boy Scouts, and that was my chosen charity whenever I'd give some money away. But it certainly isn't anymore, because they're not the EFF that I remember, just as the FSF isn't the FSF that I remember. If we look at The Guardian here as well, we can see that they're writing seemingly full articles in a well-respected newspaper about the rise and fall of a random Twitter account. Why? Because whoever wrote this article didn't like the politics of Politics for All, because it was banned from Twitter, and if you get banned from Twitter you can be fairly sure that you know exactly what sort of politics you buy into. But all of this has a sort of layer of sort of greasy, grimy politics, but that's been filmed over all of it, that makes it possible just about to see the usefulness behind it. But before that you have to go through a sort of scummy layer of stuff that you're not interested in. So another good example is this article that a lot of people in the based bald man viewer base will probably be very aware of. If we just search for the word, you probably have you probably know who it's about now. But this article, supposedly by a technology correspondent, is put under a section "The Far Right." The fact that The Guardian is harbouring communists on their opinion section and in their news section is of no matter to this man. He's perfectly happy to rub arms with them. But when in our technology news section, instead of actually talking about technology news people care about, instead we're writing articles, full-length articles, about random people's Twitter accounts, or random company Twitter accounts getting banned, and a random man who makes videos out of his Florida estate on the internet. I've not even watched him in about 2 years now, but I'm fairly sure that he's not done anything egregious enough to warrant a news article. He hasn't, bombed a government building or something. In the same way as I'm fairly sure that the US Supreme Court ruling does not have some sort of wide-reaching impact on technology. They literally said that they are holding the right to privacy firm, and so why is the EFF claiming that somehow this has got anything to do with strong controls over data collection? In the UK, we have similarly strict laws and sort of court rulings on abortion treatment, and yet we have some of the strongest data protection laws around the world, including some of the stuff that we've inherited from the EU, unfortunately, because theirs are pretty bad generally. We've got data protection laws that mean that you can literally go to jail or get a fine that's over a third of a company's annual revenue, not profits, mind, revenue, entirely revenue, just because you, for instance, sent a user's data abroad without their permission. If we just read down the most viewed section here, we can see that the most viewed here is January 6th testimony puts Trump in even greater legal peril. I have not met a single genuinely apolitical person who is remotely interested in this testimony whatsoever. The only people who are interested in this aren't people, they are walking belief systems. In the same way as in the past, the sort of Christian fundamentalists who would walk around going, I don't like you, backs, or whatever, were the ones who were trying to force everyone to think the same way as them. It now seems to be that the sort of atheist socialists are the ones trying to force everybody to think the way that they do. And I generally, as my just continual attitude towards all this, my policy is to just not interact with it. And I think that genuinely this should be the opinion of a lot of other people too. I was complaining under the SciDev video not so long ago, which I'm going to make a follow-up to, by the way, that on the go.dev site they had a bunch of banners about BLM underneath. And I was complaining about this not necessarily because I have some strong opinion on it. I do have an opinion on it, but being political, and I'll come to this in a moment, I don't think being political and having an opinion are necessarily the same thing. But there was a website completely unrelated to politics, and that was simply supposed to provide a download mirror for GitHub repositories. Tell me exactly why that needs any kind of advertising at all for any charity, or for any, protest group. We can see underneath here, male MPs attempt menopause in hot flush vest, then can't wait to take it off. Who is reading this? Who actually thinks that this is some sort of critical news story that they really need to read when they wake up on a lovely Wednesday morning? Under normal circumstances, I would be at school now, but I finished all of my exams, so I'm on leave. And somebody has to be reading this, or it wouldn't be in the most viewed section. All of this clearly has a sort of political slime that's been placed all over it. And even just sort of phrasing things as ex-justice in the modern day just has all sorts of awful connotations, especially things like this, calling you BIPOCs. There's a hilarious one as well, is it Justin Trudeau is now calling this, was it 2FS LGBIAQT plus or something like that. And this is just a sort of 2011 Tumblr meme that has been now put into government. Imagine if all of the memes that 4chan created were being put into government. We probably would end up with the exact opposite of this, but with sort of Nazism everywhere. And BIPOC, the UK government recently started saying that the most inclusive term to use was yukmugumur. And I don't even know whether I pronounced that right, because it has a bunch of unpronounceable syllables in it. But phrasing things as ex-justice just doesn't work if you're trying to be apolitical. I have in front of me here as well, you probably, I've just put it near the microphone in case you obviously can't see it. I have in front of me here the GCSE Religious Studies textbook, and the second paper of GCSE RS is called a themes paper. It's basically ethics. And so the last one is called Religion, Human Rights and Social Justice. I'm sure everybody remembers from 2015, 2016 Gamergate, all of the awful connotations that come with the phrase social justice now. And you'll notice as well that it's not just justice. They're not fighting for justice, they're fighting for social justice. They're fighting for justice along the lines of some arbitrary characteristic, and they're fighting for it for a very specific, i.e. socialist, political movement. If it had just said human rights and justice, then this would have not caused any arguments at all. But it certainly did in our case. The case with human rights as well, when they're framing things like abortions as human rights in this chapter, is not an apolitical statement. Nothing, it seems to me, anymore can be apolitical. So, I think that generally speaking, the majority of people should just be apolitical actors. Like Homer Simpson, The only political statement that Homer Simpson ever made in any single episode was "Damn Democrats" in like the third episode of The Simpsons, and they never did it again. I wonder why. The difference between having an opinion and being political is that being political inherently makes you part of some side. Having an opinion makes you an individual with a varied sort of tapestry of different things that you believe in, whereas being political is actually sort of sectioning yourself off into lots of different categories of people who will vote a certain way. I attempt to do this very specifically where I have an opinion, but I never specifically try to take a side. I have an opinion over certain politicians, but I'm not trying to sort of join arms with another group. And part of the whole sort of cringe fest of the internet politics in the modern day just comes from people joining ranks and being in these sort of tightly closed groups that never self-criticize, they never self-regulate, and they never sort of stop to ask whether what we're doing is right. All of them join a sort of hive mind, and it's not specifically socialists or communists, it's not specifically Nazis or like conservatives or like far right, far left, or centrist, or whatever. It's none of this has got anything to do with this correlation. It is all to do with this phenomena on the internet, where people seem to join arms and fail to self-regulate their own opinions. Instead, you should read widely, not just on the internet, but you should read widely in real life as well, and you should actually look for dissenting opinions. You shouldn't hide from them, you should actively seek them out. And once you've done all of that, and all of your opinions vary on many different things, then you can say that you're an apolitical actor, because you're an individual with an opinion, and you're very specifically representing a very specific subset of all of the available opinions that any possible person could have. If all of your opinions are exactly the same, then you're a political actor, and then you have a problem. It's like, in a recent podcast I was listening to, somebody said that if somebody came up to them and said that they believed in social justice and phrased it very specifically like that, or said reproductive justice, just like the EFF has said here, then I can very easily predict all of the rest of their opinions. They think, for instance, there's this meme sign that was going around that some Tumblr woman had created where it said, "No human is illegal, science is real, what was it, Black Lives Matter, and wear a mask," and stuff like that. And I agree, science is real. I agree that like black people's lives matter, obviously, but why do you need to create a sign where you're basically showing compliance with some sort of checklist of all the different things that you have to believe in? And the fact that these signs were so independently being created all over the world and perfectly well summarized all of the things that, frankly, people like me trying to point out the fact that your opinions are all cookie cutter come from. And there was unbelievably as well, the sort of racists on Twitter completely shot themselves in the foot by responding by making their own version that was supposed to be some sort of rebuttal. Instead, it just made them seem like the exact same kind of hive mind lunatics that the people who created the sign in the first place were. And this all comes down to the core of the issue. Everybody seems to be taking a side, and I don't like it. I wish we could go back to the EFF just making Privacy Badger and telling us what websites are stealing our information. I wish that they should be a sort of lobbying organisation very specifically in the field of internet privacy. But this has got nothing to do with internet privacy, and not only has it got nothing to do with internet privacy, it's got nothing to do with any of these things that they claim that they're for either. So, neither the EFF nor the Guardian will get any of my money in the future, and neither are any of these other sort of faux political actors. I'm going to go back to writing good software without sort of politics interfering, and this is my sort of leaving warning. If you fall into the trap like all of these organisations and all these people have, of turning yourself into just a walking belief system, nobody will want to interact with you because of your personality or because of who you are. They will interact with you purely because of the politics that you present and display with every syllable that you speak. If I can tell immediately after meeting you what party you vote for, then you're doing something wrong. Instead, you should attempt to just speak like a human, not like someone who's defined by what box they put a cross in a polling station. Okay, so that was the end of the little mini rant today, and like I said, having an opinion is different to being a political actor. I'm pretty sure that my opinion on a lot of things has probably been very evident throughout of this, but that's okay. Everybody is welcome to their opinion, and I perfectly well respect the fact that there's going to be a lot of people watching this that don't agree with all the things that they've said. But I think that if you watch the rest of the stuff on here, my opinion that is displayed frankly boils down to the fact that I don't think you should have 10 megabytes of JavaScript on a simple website, like seems to be encouraged these days. That's basically only opinion, along with the fact that I think you should use C and Go, or like C++ is alright. Those are basically all the opinions, and they're all technology related. Okay. This has gone for a bit longer than I imagined it would, 15 minutes in fact, so I'm going to cut it short there. Thank you for watching, and please heed the warning. It is, I think it's very important, and it can probably save the internet as we know it at this point.